Those in the recovery camp should be reminded of the old fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes. And the story goes that the Emperor hires two swindlers who promise him the finest suit from the most beautiful cloth. And the cloth, they tell him, is invisible to anyone who is either stupid or unfit for his position. Now the Emperor of course can't see the non-existent cloth, but he pretends that he can through fear of appearing stupid, and his minister and chancellor do the same. And when the swindlers report that the suit's finished, they dress him in mime, and then he goes on a procession through the city showing off his new clothes. But when he parades through the city, his ministers and all the adult onlookers say nothing because they're victims of groupthink. And if you remember the story correctly, it took a child to finally cry out that the emperor has no clothes, because each individual foolishly believed in the collective crowd's view, rather than looking at the obvious facts that the emperor was stark naked. So there's a lesson in this for all you recovery believers. Base your opinions on the facts. Don't be fooled by this phenomenon of groupthink. That's exactly what the media has created in this story of recovery. So using the media to prop up financial markets has probably become just as prevalent in periods of financial instability as government-sponsored propaganda was in war times. Look at this billboard in Times Square, New York. Recession 101. The only downturns comparable to this were in... never mind. Well, I reckon they should have stuck this chart up on the board and let everyone make up their own mind. Look at how indebted America was in the Great Depression, and look at the situation that they're in now. What's the relevance of all these dates given the situation that they're in now? And I can tell you, there's no relevance. It's just that a complacent population is much easier to manage. There's a legendary gold investor by the name of Jim Sinclair, who I follow. He refers to this propaganda phenomenon as MOPE, Management of Perspective Economics. And that's what the economists and the media do. They manage our perspective. Take the US government, for example. Obama has surrounded himself with a bunch of so-called behaviourist economists. Now, this is the latest fad. You might have seen some of these books on behavioural economics. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's based on deception. You know, how you herd the sheep. Peter Orszag, budget director, behavioural economist. Cass Sunstein, administrator of the White House Office in Information and Regulatory Affairs, behavioural economist. He also co-authored Nudge. Larry Summers, director of Obama's National Economic Council, behavioural economist. Larry recently proclaimed that the recession was over. And get this, he points to the declining number of Google searches for the words economic depression as proof that we're recovering. Wake up, Larry. Since when did the mob's perception of the economy become the economy? It's like these behavioural economists believe that they can turn the economy around by fooling everyone into borrowing and spending again, or perhaps by nudging us back into the markets with all their talk of recovery. They are indeed swindlers. Larry's a high-ranking government official, yet he got paid $5 million last year from hedge fundee Shaw. He also raked in another $2.7 million in speaking fees from the very same Wall Street investment banks that were the recipients of billions of dollars in bailout money. This is all on the White House's own financial disclosure forms. Larry is a swindler. He'd pick your pocket if he had the chance. Same goes for Ben Bernanke, chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank. Most Fed watchers realise that they appoint the Fed chairman purely on their skills in sophistry. So if you can dodge questions and talk in circles and avoid giving direct answers while still holding a straight face, you've got the job. Take a look at this next clip.
Ben, there's been a lot of talk about a housing bubble, particularly, from the Fed, from all sorts of different places. Can you give us your view as to whether or not there is a housing bubble out there?
Well, unquestionably, housing prices are up quite a bit. I think it's important to note that fundamentals are also very strong. We've got a growing economy, jobs, incomes. We've got very low mortgage rates. We've got demographics supporting housing growth. We've got restricted supply in some places. So it's certainly understandable that the prices would go up some. I don't know whether prices are exactly where they should be, but I think it's fair to say that much of what's happened is supported by the strength of the economy.
Tell me, what is the worst case scenario? So we have so many economists coming on our air and saying, oh, this is a bubble and it's going to burst and this is going to be a real issue for the economy. Some say it could even cause a recession at some point. What is the worst case scenario if, in fact, we were to see prices come down substantially across the country?
Well, I guess I don't buy your premise. It's a pretty unlikely possibility. We've never had a decline in house prices on a nationwide basis. So what I think is more likely is that house prices will slow, maybe stabilize, might slow consumption spending a bit. I don't think it's going to drive the economy too far from its full employment path, though.
So would you agree with that?
Now, Bernanke isn't as stupid as he looks. He's a charlatan. He knew full well that there was a housing bubble and that it was going to burst, just as he knows full well that the dollar system is dead.
Meetings, and you had a meeting just recently with other central bankers. Does this thought come up about a new international world reserve currency? And if so, does the subject of gold ever come up? How do you restore the confidence? Have you recently had conversation with any central banker? And is there a move on to replace the dollar system? Because the dollar system is essentially declared dead. Because it's not working. But this indeed was predictable because of these tremendous imbalances that were never allowed to be corrected, and they were always patched up. We always came in. We'd spend. We'd inflate. We would run up deficits. And since '71, we've been able to correct these problems. Could you tell me what kind of conversations you've had regarding a new reserve currency?
Yes, Congressman. I don't think the dollar system is dead. I think the dollar remains the premier international currency. We've seen a good bit of appreciation in the dollar recently during the crisis precisely because